Today, our TED Talk will be on the 4 response modes of buyers. For a seller, knowing when to approach a customer is often just as important as knowing what the customer and our company needs. A simple rule of thumb that we can use is people buy when and only when they perceive a discrepancy between reality and their desired results. Perceived discrepancy is the key to buyer receptivity. As we have stated before, receptivity can appear in 4 different modes. I'll explain the first and then pass it off for my other team members for the other 3. Our first response mode is growth. A buyer in growth mode is always ready to say yes to somebody's proposal, though not necessarily to yours. This person perceives the essential discrepancy and being in this response mode believes that it can be eliminated only by more or better results. There may be a rising production quota to fill, more orders to fill than products, or a recent memo to step up quality control. Whatever the individual's reason for wanting to do more or better, you have a good probability of getting a commitment, provided that your proposal is seen as good for the company or to reduce or eliminate the discrepancy. This chart explains the growth mode. The bottom line illustrates the way the buyer perceives the reality of the current business situation. The top line shows where he or she would like that situation to be, or what they would like their desired results. The space between is the discrepancy, so if you can fill the discrepancy with your proposal, so the buyer in growth mode, then you will succeed. Now I'm going to pass it off to Garrett, who's going to explain the next response mode.
Alright, so, like in growth, there's a high probability that action will be taken in the second response mode, trouble. When you find yourself in a situation with a buyer who's in trouble, in a situation that we call trouble, don't be misled by the name. This can be a huge strength for you as a seller. In order to illustrate trouble, we take a look at this chart here. In this situation, the bottom line illustrates the buyer's perception of their current reality, while the top line right here illustrates the perception of results needed to have success or, quote, win. Here's the key. There's a discrepancy between reality and results that's seen right here. This means that the buyer will become open to a possible change. This is where you, as a seller, can step in. You can either make or break the sale here. There's a key difference between a buyer in growth mode and a buyer in trouble mode. A buyer in growth mode is looking for change to improve an already good situation, where the buyer in trouble mode is looking for immediate change in order to save themselves from really drowning in defeat. His or her basic plea in this mode is SOS. The solution that they're most likely to approve, this is the buyer, the solution that they're most likely to approve is going to be one that will, and this is important, most quickly remove the cause of the perceived problem. Therefore, it is not wise to fill their ears with pitches about the latest bells and whistles or technical improvements, but rather sell survival, period, end of story. With the help of my product or service, your company will survive and you will see the results quickly. So, I'm going to turn it over to Ashley. She's going to talk about the third response mode.
The third response mode is even keel. This is not meant for an easy selling situation. This is because the chances of making the sale is low because the buyer doesn't understand the difference between current reality and the desired results. This is also known as a red flag because the probability of the buyer making any type of action is low. Why rock the boat now if what you're doing is currently working? The proposal will be seen as a threat. The buyers in this situation are wary of any kind of change. There are 3 ways, however, to raise the chances of making the sale. The first is growth or trouble coming. The second is pressure by a buyer in growth or trouble already. The third is to demonstrate discrepancy that the buyer doesn't see. First, growth or trouble coming. Keep on top of the prospect's needs. Know how your product can help the buyer. Without it, it will eventually create problems. 2, use pressure from another buying influence. Use another buying influence, such as someone senior, to put pressure on him or her to reassess the situation. You can also find someone playing the economic buyer role. It is their job to forecast the future. They can then sell the growth or future to the economic buyer and then convert them to the buyer mode. However, if the buyer is even keel, the chances of making the sale are not good. Finally, you can demonstrate a discrepancy that they haven't already perceived. Show them that the reality isn't as great as they think it is. Or you can show them that the results are not as good as they could be. For example, a manager normally turns out 500 units a day, but today they're turning out 510. However, their competition is turning out 700 units. The manager is now much more receptive to change because they know that the competition is doing better than they are. In conclusion, buyers in even keel are comfortable. They must adapt the watch and wait mentality. The buyer may not need the product or service today, but if you wait, in the future, they may need it. Now I'm going to pass it off to Justin. He's going to explain the last response mode.
So now I'm going to talk to you about the fourth response mode, which is overconfident. Imagine trying to sell someone a product that they absolutely want nothing to do with. They are the hardest group to sell to. You basically have a 0% chance of selling to them, hence the grumpy face here. They have no incentive to change, and they feel that their optimal point is where they are right now. Nothing that you can say, do, say, whatever can help their current situation. You aren't being helpful, you're more just being intrusive. And this overconfidence usually cycles right back to trouble. Now they typically either have low goals or they misunderstand their situation completely. Now you might be wondering, how can this be fixed? It can only be fixed with a massive dose of reality. They have to realize that their situation they're in is not optimal. Now what advice do we have for you? Just don't waste your time. Just wait and get ready to fix the problem when it inevitably comes to an end. So now, to conclude, I'm going to pass it off to my friend Nick, and he's going to give you guys a summary.
So, to wrap this discussion up, I just want to leave you with a piece of advice. Obviously, the most ideal sales situation to be in is a sales situation where all of the buying influencers in a sale are in either the growth or the trouble modes, because, as we mentioned earlier, people in these modes are much easier to sell to. However, the likely reality in a sales situation is that each buyer is going to be in a different stage of the 4 response modes. One buying influencer may be in the trouble mode, one may be in even keel, and one may be overconfident. So approaching a sales situation with a singular, uniformed approach is not the best way to have success. What we have to realize is that each buying influencer is likely from a different department in the organization with different interests. So, my advice to you is this: don't forget the A. The A stands for attunement, which is one of Daniel Pink's fundamental ABCs to selling. So in order to have the most success in a sales situation, you need to stick to your fundamentals and don't forget the A. So now, I'm going to pass it off to you to apply this approach in your own sales experience.